Hey, 42 here. Imagine a man playing a slot machine. He pulls the lever and the almost offensively saturated wheels perform their hypnotic dance. If by chance he hits a winning combo, it isn't just a machine that lights up. Deep inside his skull, a fizz of neon erupts as the nucleus accumbens, his brain's reward center, lights up like his own personal Las Vegas. The man can't quite explain why, but he feels good. So good that he wants to do it again. So he pulls the lever, but this time, he's not so lucky. Feeling dejected, he retrieves his phone from his pocket and pulls down to refresh his Instagram feed. Something new pops up, and there's that sneaky little feeling again. He glances at his WhatsApp, hoping to see that beacon of pleasure, that small red circle, like an addict chasing the tail of the dragon. This man has been duped by dopamine. Modern life is just a giant casino floor, and we unwitting punters are always seeking more. More likes, more comments, more views, more messages, more dings, more dongs, more dopamine. But some people have started trying to beat the house. They have stopped playing by the rules of the casino because they have stopped playing altogether. Welcome to the very new and very strange world of dopamine detoxing. Silicon Valley zealots are increasingly committing to a life with no phones, no emails, no Netflix, no chill, no talking, no food, and no fun whatsoever. What is it all for? Well, that's a very good question, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, let's dive into dopamine, because as you learn more about the pleasure chemical, you begin to realize that maybe, just maybe, there is something behind this new Silicon Valley religion after all. The common misconception about dopamine is that it's an instant action reward system. But it's kind of the opposite. Dopamine is a reward prediction and modulation system. And I know that sounds rather abstract, so let's break it down step by step. It all starts with anticipation. Imagine you're walking down the street and you're a little bit peckish when, suddenly, the heavenly scent of fresh donuts seduces your nostrils. You turn to see one of those fairground-style donut vans parked up. And before you even take one step towards it, your dopamine system is already hard at work trying to predict the future. Dopamine starts to be released in your nucleus accumbens long before you have actually received any gratification. You're still a few minutes off purchasing a donut, let alone biting into it, but your brain is already predicting what that will feel like, and it will actually start to produce more dopamine if it expects that donut to be extra tasty. So you walk over and buy a bag of freshly fried sugar-coated donuts. Because let's be honest, what choice did you have? Those little things taste so bloody amazing. But whilst you eat them, your brain is carefully making notes. If that donut happens to be better than expected, if you bite into a pillowy, warm, satisfying donut, then your dopamine levels will peak, surging higher than any previous donut experience. Congratulations, you have just set a new benchmark, a new high tide watermark for your dopamine system, at least when it comes to predicting donuts. However, if the donuts turn out to be worse than your dopamine system anticipated, if they're a little bit stale and sad, for example, then your dopamine system will make a permanent adjustment. So, in the future, it will predict donuts to be less rewarding. This is what's known as prediction error. Your brain makes a prediction, and then it monitors the result and corrects the error. This means that dopamine rewards are not fixed throughout your life. They fluctuate depending on what you do, how often you do it, and how rewarding you find that activity each time you do it. Your brain is constantly recalibrating itself, and that's really important. The dopamine system evolved in this way for a reason. Our early ancestors grew up in a world of rampant unpredictability. Trees that bear fruit one day do not the next. Fruit that was sweet and tasty is now bitter. Tribes that are warm and welcoming are at other times hostile. If our dopamine system was rigid and unable to adapt, we might have found ourselves much too eager and willing to eat poisonous food and to approach enemies without due care. In short, we wouldn't last very long. It's also important that our brains try to predict dopamine in advance, because this feeling of, if I do that, it will feel good, and if I do that other thing, it will feel less good, is a vital decision-making mechanism in the Homo sapiens toolbox. Working on this channel for over 10 years, most days by myself, can take its toll. At times, it has felt lonely. And sometimes I'm drawn to solve that loneliness by turning to devices for that quick dopamine rush. So recently, I've been trying out meditation to just unwind without any distractions. And honestly, it's been really helping me. I just put my phone on silent and use Headspace to guide me through meditation. Whether you need support as you navigate larger life events, handle daily life moments, or achieve goals of becoming the best version of yourself, Headspace can help. Headspace is the mental health app here to help you manage your stress through personalized recommendations, guided meditations and exercises. Headspace has really helped me to unwind and keep away from quick and cheap dopamine fixes. And I'm not alone. Headspace is proven to increase happiness and decrease stress in just 10 days. You know, meditating with Headspace was something I just tried on a whim to see if it would help me, because I was finding that even in my moments away from work, my brain was still constantly whirring away, thinking about whatever project I'm currently working on. But I've found that meditation guided by Headspace has helped me detach from work so much that I'm going to keep it up. Even if it's just a quick 5 minutes here and there using Headspace's quick meditations, I feel like it really helps me to transition mentally from that workspace to my relaxation and family space. And it feels like for the first time in a long time, I've been able to truly leave work in the office where it should be. Did you know that Headspace can also help you to fall asleep quicker and have a more restful night? I've always struggled nodding off, probably because I spend most of my day staring at a screen which plays havoc with your circadian rhythm. But Headspace is packed full of expert-led sleep tools, such as guided sleep meditations, sleep casts, and much more. As soon as I put on one of these, it just flicks a switch in my brain that tells it it's time to wind down and start producing melatonin, ready for a long, deep sleep. Sign up for a free 60-day Headspace trial today using the QR code on screen or the link in the description. And a big thanks to Headspace for being the sponsor of this video. Every day, this dopamine anticipation propels us to do things that will be rewarding and hopefully productive. At least that used to be the case. As you and I both know all too well, in our modern world, things that are rewarding are rarely productive. So what's the big problem? If dopamine makes you feel good, why shouldn't you experience these little mind treats every other minute of the day? Well, do you remember how good it felt when you got your first ever smartphone? For the first couple of weeks, it was amazing every time you read the latest news and checked the weather from your pocket and witnessed social media highlights from your friends pop up on your screen. You were blown away by how connected and how alive you felt. Well, let me ask you, after several years of owning a smartphone, does it still feel the same? Do you still get that same dopamine rush from every ding dong and pong? I'm willing to bet not. It all goes back to that prediction error methodology of your dopamine system. Over the years, your brain has learnt to constantly predict how good it will feel when it sees a phone notification. But the problem is, it's never that good, is it? Those little red circles consistently overpromise and underdeliver. So, what happens is that your brain adjusts its dopamine prediction error, and the next time you receive a notification, your nucleus accumbens doesn't release as much mind candy as the last time. So you seek more notifications, more likes, more comments, in order to get more mind candy more often. But it's a fruitless endeavor. Your brain continually adjusts its dopamine response to be less and less. App developers get around this problem by pseudo-randomizing when notifications appear with a little bit of maths called variable ratio schedule. It's incredibly powerful at keeping you interested, but more about that at the end of the video. The big problem here is that since most of the things that make you feel good in the modern day aren't actually rewarding or productive, your dopamine system goes into a doom spiral and it starts to malfunction. Those little moments throughout the day that used to feel good, checking your phone, watching TikTok, even conversing with a friend, now barely scratch the surface. A single donut is no longer satisfying. Now it has to be a stack of donuts topped with bacon and syrup and sprinkles. And if it won't get 1,000 likes on Instagram, well, is it worth eating at all? Truly, it's not a nice way to feel. Yet, it's quickly becoming the status quo. And when you have work to do and family obligations, your overactive but never quite satisfied dopamine system just gets in the way. Remember I said that the dopamine system evolved to guide Homo sapiens to decide what's most worth doing at any moment in time? Yeah, well, dopamine is meant to be that, your mind's compass, pointing you towards actions that deliver real, tangible rewards. Building a shelter with the reward of staying dry, for example. But the modern world breaks that system wide apart. And it's really dangerous. Your brain genuinely believes that another 10 minutes scrolling Instagram is the optimal move because that's where it expects the easy rewards to be. Even though, at the back of your mind, you know you've got work deadlines, responsibilities, and goals that are far more important that would actually lead to genuine reward. In short, your dopamine system has been hacked. Decades of brain scans and animal studies have demonstrated that this runaway dopamine loop doesn't just flatten pleasure, it ratchets up your anxiety. Heavy internet users have markedly fewer D2 dopamine receptors in the striatum. And the more those receptors drop off, the more anxiety increases. When scientists repeatedly flooded mice's brains with dopamine, the mice started to exhibit anxious behavior after just a few days, such as in one experiment hiding in the dark corners of their enclosure. These strange behaviors subsided after their dopamine taps were turned off. And all of this is exactly why dopamine detoxing is the hot new fad, especially amongst those high-flying, high-earning types, for whom breaking out of this neurological prison and unshackling themselves from the chains of cheap, easy but unfulfilling dopamine can potentially add thousands or even millions to their salary. Because after a dopamine detox, their dopamine compasses are now pointing in the direction of genuine productivity. At least that's the idea. Now, when I say dopamine detox, you probably imagine simple restrictions such as less social media and taking breaks from mobile devices. But no, this trend, when practiced properly, requires almost superhuman levels of abstinence. Everyone does their dopamine fasts a little differently, but the main tenets are no food, and I mean none. Just like a traditional fast, you must only drink water. Food is of course pleasurable. Even the promise of food causes dopamine anticipation. So, strict adherents will typically avoid looking at any advertisements or glancing at fast food menus on the side of the road to avoid their nucleus accumbens from activating. Most obviously, no phones are allowed during a dopamine detox, but practitioners actually insist on a full media blackout. That means no computers, no video games, no TVs, no screens of any kind. Detoxers usually set up an email autoresponder and totally ignore emails for the duration of their detox, which I can only presume reads something like, "Hi, I can't answer right now. I'm doing that pretentious thing again where I pretend you don't exist for a few days, because I live in California." The most extreme practitioners will also ban themselves from all social contact. They won't converse with another human being for the duration of their fast. Some even go as far as to avoid making eye contact with other humans, because eye contact releases dopamine. Exercise is also prohibited, as well as other kinds of vigorous physical activity. It's all a little bit silly, to be honest, and you're probably thinking, nobody actually does any of this apart from a few Silicon Valley nutters. Well, that's undeniably true, but it is a fast-growing trend within a very small circle of people. Jack Dorsey, Twitter's co-founder, was one of the original dopamine detoxers. He would regularly send himself to what I imagine were vastly overpriced meditation retreats where he wouldn't interact with others or technology or eat any food for the duration of his stay. But I didn't make this video to yap about some Silicon Valley fanatics. These people might be taking things to the extreme, and to give them some credit, it's a level of abstention that, if we're honest with ourselves, 99% of us could never stick to for more than a few hours. But there are some really important lessons here that us unwashed folk can learn from them, and maybe we can implement small snippets of their fasting system into our own lives to greatly improve our overall wellness and happiness. Because after all, who doesn't want to do that? And a great place to start is with what is probably the easiest win of all. Simply moving your phone to a different room whilst you're working. I know that sounds stupidly simple, but you'll be shocked at what this does to your brain. A few years ago, a paper was released with the intriguing title, Brain Drain. The mere presence of one's own smartphone reduces available cognitive capacity. A bold statement. And in the study, 520 undergraduates were split into 3 groups and asked to complete various tasks and puzzles that tested their memory and fluid intelligence. The first group all had their phones placed next to them right on the desk. The second group placed their phones in their bags, and the third group put their phones in a different room entirely. And the results were astounding. Those with their phones on their desks performed significantly worse at all tasks than the other 2 groups. The best results came from the group who had their phones in a different room, proving that even if your phone isn't in view, having it in your bag or pocket is still damaging to your cognitive capacity. In short, the participants who had their phones on their desks were roughly 15% dumber and slower when doing tasks than those who put their phones in a different room. And it didn't even matter whether the phones were on silent, turned upside down, or even switched off altogether. Just the sight of a phone is like a clarion call to the owner. Having your phone near you causes your brain to constantly anticipate a potential dopamine reward from a phone notification or other interaction. This anticipatory system is still whirring away even whilst your phone is turned off. According to the handful of studies we've done, the general consensus is that simply having your phone on your desk or around you costs you roughly the same amount of mental energy as a bad night's sleep. Now, before I leave you, if there's one thing that you remember from this video, let it be this. A reward you might get is far more motivating than one you're guaranteed to get. American behaviorist B.F. Skinner proved this 70-odd years ago, when he set pigeons pecking levers for feed pellets. But the pellets were set to be delivered not predictably, but on an intermittent and variable ratio schedule. In other words, they knew they'd get a reward, they just didn't know when. It's the exact same maths that powers slot machines, by the way. The birds pecked feverishly, even through long, dry spells, because they knew that eventually they'd receive a payout, and their dopamine system would eventually be paid off with a reward. It's so powerful that multiple psychologists have noted that variable ratio rewards create the most extinction-proof behavior in a species. Make of that what you will, but variable ratio is certainly enough to power multi-billion-dollar casinos. In another experiment in 1954, electrodes were wired directly into a rat's pleasure circuit. Then they were given a lever that would randomly but predictably deliver jolts of dopamine when pressed, kind of like a slot machine. One of the rats pressed the lever 7,000 times an hour, ignoring the need to eat food or drink water. My point is this. Today, there are so many things competing for your attention, and your phone and other devices are programmed with variable ratio rewards baked in. Platform notifications, all the way from Instagram to Tinder, are batched, shuffled, or withheld just long enough to keep the odds somewhat fuzzy and your thumb swiping. So, whether you need to dive headfirst into a hardcore dopamine detox, or just move your phone elsewhere for a few hours each day, it doesn't matter. What's most important is that you find a way to ensure the rewards your brain anticipates and the rewards it receives are truly fulfilling and productive, such as a game of football with your friends or enjoying a hearty meal with your family, instead of hoovering up vacuous digital brain candy. I know it's easier said than done, but if you try, the science shows that over time, your dopamine system will recalibrate, and you will start to enjoy everything you do just that little bit more. Furthermore, your dopamine compass will begin pointing you towards fruitful and productive endeavors again, rather than urging you every day to play the Silicon Valley slot machine, awaiting you behind yet another screen. Thanks for watching. Just before I go, remember that if you're struggling navigating a large life event at the moment, and you feel like you're being overburdened with stress, I highly encourage you to try Headspace, because it truly helped me to unwind and find inner peace and serenity amongst the chaos and excess dopamine of daily life. So sign up for a free 60-day Headspace trial today using the QR code or the link in the description. And a big thanks to Headspace for being the sponsor of this video.